Right, I'm turning the chat off.
So thanks for watching the stream.
Right. Okay. PvP chat. Stop talking about this stuff. Otherwise, you're all banned. And I'm gonna set Meller on you, and he's gonna be like a rabid dog, like ripping your face off. Right. Here we go. All right. Hit me. Sorry, guys. I apologize for that.
Yo. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, fantastically even. I'm just having a good time already on stream, and now I'm having a better time in the ArenaLabs PvP podcast.
Yeah, well, welcome, dude.
Yeah.
It's nice to have you on. Like, we're obviously a small town operation, a small tier operation, so currently growing, but having a big celebrity like yourself on is good, man.
Oh, I love to hear it. I'm glad to be here.
While we've got the exposure, but obviously for those who are listening later or in the future, we are currently streaming this on Teapot's channel on Twitch, which is awesome. So hello chat. I don't know if anyone's going to be saying, but I've got the chat up as well. Welcome to the ArenaLabs PvP podcast. My name is Steakers. I'm joined by my fellow co-host Crayola.
And our guest today, Teapot, on his stream, which is fantastic. Thank you for hosting us.
Yes, no problem.
Actually, having a fun time watching the stream. Drank half of my tea already.
Yeah.
So.
I'm in a similar situation.
Watching you lose your shit there is definitely content, and I like it. But we're going to try and avoid the inevitable topic of the state of the game to sort of cool it out, and we're going to talk about something positive for once.
Very nice. I love to hear it.
So because we've got quite you've obviously got a couple of one or two viewers looking at the numbers there, one or two watching. We'll probably explain what we do is a good opportunity. Crayola, you're kind of the head shed, the brains of the operation. Do you want to tell everybody what we do?
Yeah, we're pushing forth conversation just regarding Guild Wars 2 PvP. We think it's the best game ever. The lack of love for the game is imminent. It's known throughout the game, throughout the years, and we just want to put something to the game. And a lot of players are stepping behind our cause. We're just kind of creating it together, as well as right now. This is a testament to that. And we're just looking for anybody and everybody that PvPs to kind of join forces and go for this kind of push where we try to, make good games, make good discussion. Basically learn this larger population of players that may not have a good chance of learning how to play their class or build or whatever rotations because the system is so bad at teaching the game, right? That we kind of want to enable players to teach players in that respect. Not just from streams, but actually to play together. So this is what we're doing tonight after the podcast as well, in houses. We host them once every week. We're trying to do 2v2 tournaments as well, but it's not... we're just doing 5v5 for now.
But yeah, so in a nutshell, we are trying to improve the community by doing it ourselves. As people have mentioned in the chat, without getting too much on the subject, PvP hasn't had much love. We haven't had much content, so we're kind of taking the matter into our own hands, like you have, Teapot, with the PvP tournaments and stuff, which is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So one thing I want to kind of pick your brains on, Teapot, while we've got you on the show, is your community. Your community interaction. You are pretty much carrying the game in regards to viewers on Twitch and content. How obviously we had Masters of the Arena and things like that. How can I put this in a different way? I haven't planned anything like this. This is the budget podcast that it is. How do you go about organizing these community events? Is it pretty much a one-man operation? Obviously, I know there are a few other people behind the scene, but how much work goes into organizing something like Masters of the Arena?
Masters of the Arena is a harrowing tale. It really is. Like, the amount that was probably... It was definitely the most hours I've ever put into any project. And there are a lot of people involved. And a lot of the administration was not done by me. Like with the previous tournaments, like the raid tournaments that I've done, it was actually very much kind of a one-man operation. I did, most of the adminning, like all of the overlays and stuff like that, like all that kind of crazy stuff there too. Got some artists in to help me out with some art stuff as well. Then you have the teams themselves. But with Master of the Arena, it was actually like a really massive team effort. Like, more than anything before. And a massive grind from myself as well. Like, that was, in fact, a lot of this is something I've talked about a lot, actually, and it is very, very true, is that Master of the Arena was very unfinished. In fact, I think a lot of the artwork, actually, for the tournament, like the overlay stuff, that had to be done the day before, because it wasn't finished until literally the last moment there, and it came through there as well. And yeah, there was lots of stuff going on there, particularly the development aspect, like making the overlay, which was one of my favorite parts about Master of the Arena, but it was also one of my least favorite parts about Master of the Arena, because it was a massive grind to get that done in time. It was horrible, but it was worth it, so that's how it goes.
How did you find, like, obviously getting all the teams together and the actual organizations from the community point of view? Because the stream parts, something I heard Blamthrax say is that you spend more time as Teapot than in real life. So that is your real life personality as Teapot. So the amount of work that you put into it. But how did you find interacting with sort of the top tier teams on the US side and on the EU side? Was it kind of a pain in the ass to kind of communicate with them all, or was everybody sort of up for it?
I was actually very pleasantly surprised. In previous tournaments, the raid tournaments in particular, I've had some pretty bad experiences. Not with toxicity. It's not like the toxic element. People, obviously, people can mouth off a little bit. There was some of that in Master of the Arena, right? Like, people popping off, going crazy, like a little bit of flaming, right? A little bit of trash talk. But actually, yeah, the PvP guys were really easy to organize. Actually, like much easier than the raid guys. They were much more compliant. I would say the word, like, not they both were up for it, but the raid guys, they wanted it exactly their way, and the PvP teams were like a little bit more willing to accommodate, like my plans and stuff, and we're like, we'll just play, right? Unless I can't do that day, because my fish needs a walk, right? It's, yeah, that's how it is, right?
For sure. Yeah. I think the PvP community is grateful forever for you hosting that event, Moda, for sure. Like that, and a big respect that spawned this podcast between us.
Nice.
Yeah. So, because we found that a lot of games have like the PvP podcast or their own PvP podcast or podcast dedicated, and you obviously had Tea Time, which covered everything in the game. But we found there was like a kind of gap in the gap in the market to sort of get in there and talk about the game, because as we all know, PvP is really, really complex. There's a lot that goes into it, like obviously all the combo fields and rotations. There's a lot which we can talk about, and from a entry level player, a player who just comes into the game to sort of get up and learn the game, it's a steep learning curve, and having a chance to talk to some of the top players in the game to share their experiences and tips is quite valuable, and it does. If you are interested in PvP, it creates a good conversation at the end of the day, and it's nice to listen to. Absolutely,
yeah. I think it's always good to have a big variety of different types of content that anyone can engage in for players of all interests in the game, like all skill levels and all different tastes.
So yeah, going back onto the sort of the tournament scene, obviously the top end of the PvP scene is very, very, it's a high skill gap to get there. How do you feel that for the average player, the tournament scene is? How do you feel that is from a game point of view, Teapot?
This is actually one of the biggest problems with actually every end game mode in Guild Wars 2, is that you have a lot of players who've been around for a long time and are really good at the game at the top. And you have a lot of players who are, new and not super experienced in that game. And I'm talking, when I say end game modes, to be clear, I'm talking raids, PvP, world versus world, stuff like, fractals, right? Like end game fractals, right? Like that's what I mean by end game. And this is a really big problem, actually. Like this is a really good thing to talk about, because the problem is that there is not enough in the middle, right? And suppose you're a new team in PvP, right? And you want to compete in the monthly AT. You could obviously do that. You can get your team together. Before you can really start competing, and actually, like when I say competing, I mean like actually putting up a fight. to play against like the top teams, it will take you months before you can even get close. And when I say honestly months, it can be like 6 months before you're able to really get anything done. And that does kind of shove people away. And the trouble is that you find yourself in this midpoint very, very quickly, where you either win very, very hard or lose very, very hard. Like, for example, you know, if you have a team and you get relatively competent, like you'll be able to dispatch most pug teams in an AT, you know, 500 to 100, 500 to 0. In that kind of range. But then you reach the finals, and then you encounter the Lakers, you encounter the French Worms, you encounter Team Prestige, and then they're going to 500 OU, right? Even though you're able to 500 like the basic teams, there's not enough like middle level teams to give you good games. You're either going to stomp or get stomped. And this is the same in raids as well. Like there's a lot of there's a good amount of like high end, quite try hard speed running raid guilds, all that sort of stuff. And you've got the, you know, the experienced, you know, the inexperienced players, like, you know, the new players coming into raids, and kind of making that jump to actually get good at the game mode is really difficult because most people have already either finished the journey or they're right there at the start with you, right? And that means that there isn't this natural pathway through the community, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like we
gets cut off, yeah, in the middle for sure.
Yeah, because I feel like there's not enough incentives or not. I wouldn't say like physical rewards or anything like that, but say titles or anything like gold as a rank is, let's be honest, where probably most players lie, gold or silver, that from not on the top end, but obviously where most players in the whole population will lie. There isn't really a prestige where people go, oh damn, he's that rank or pushing plat, or he is plat or everything like that. There's no reward or prestige with the PvP scene. I feel like that's the problem. It's either you are amazing at PvP or you're trash. I feel like that's how people view rank system at the moment.
Well, I mean, the thing is with the ranking system is that rating, I mean, Valon did a video on this, is that rating is not very representative of actual skill.
I agree.
And the problem with that is that people don't really care about the leaderboard, and so they don't go like, oh, you know, I want to hit Plat 3, right? You know, I really want to go for Legend, because they know that it doesn't really mean that they're even necessarily like really good. Obviously, you know, if you get to Legend, like, you know, in high Plat, you're much better than the average player, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually like really, really good at the game. Like, it can be meaningful, but it's not as meaningful as it should be, and that's tied into population, right? Like the big thing there is player population is not high enough to make the leaderboards particularly meaningful. And I think the other thing is there as well is the actual structure of the monthly automated tournament itself. I say this a lot kind of as a joke, but it is actually very, very real. There is no second place in monthly AT. You either win or you lose, right? It is very, very polarizing, and this is a really difficult thing to do. Like, I think maybe if you added a title for maybe making it to the top 4, right, and then maybe a second place title as well, you could maybe have that going on there. To basically give you something for not just winning, because right now you either win, right, or you get essentially nothing, right? Like you know, the rewards there are not prestigious, right? Like, you know, if you come second, you get some gold and mystic coins, right? And there's not a single player in PvP who cares about that, right? How do I know this? Well, I know this because it turns out that, you know, like all the PvPers who I painstakingly made a spreadsheet for, or rather, Plenix, a friend of mine who helped me with the Master of the Arena organization, made a spreadsheet for all these players to see what rewards they'd like from our massive prize pool, and then they promptly ecto-gambled it all away within weeks. So, you know, like, the trouble is that, you know, just gold isn't enough. You need something that has this intrinsic value to it, right? Like, you can't just have, oh yeah, have some gold, right? You know, good job, you came second in the month, have some gold. No, like, that's nothing, right? That has no value. You know, it's got to be, you know, a title, something unique, something prestigious, as you know, quite rightly pointed out.
Yeah, so the running meme on this podcast is back in the Guild Wars 1 days, which I love, and obviously you played Guild Wars 1. I liked how the title system worked there with PvP, because you could have like rank 5 champion if you were a top tier like GVG player. It'd be quite nice to have that in sort of, you've done a lot of ATs, you've won a lot of ATs, so you get a certain rank in that, and it's a progression where you can, like, you have your standard PvP rank at the bottom of your screen, which means literally nothing. It would be quite nice to sort of have a little title that changes depending on how much you've played as well.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I think you like have something like that. I think one thing that really excited me actually would be, what if the top 4 all got best of the best, but best of the best for 3rd and 4th is bronze, right? Like a bronze color, right? Best of the best for 2nd is silver, and then of course best of the best for 1st is gold, right? And that would also be kind of similar to the Guild Wars 1-esque system, where you have this like evolving title, right? Okay, you have this title that changes like the more you grind it, right? Like the more you go for it, right? Something that, you know, gold walking amongst mere mortals, or, you know, something like the Lightbringer rank, right? You know, these things, or the hero rank, right? It just keeps on going up and up and up over time. And you know, Arena has a little bit more technology now, right? For example, like, and when I'm talking about the color sake, I mean like literally changing the color of the title, right? Because if you guys have seen this, you know, the Extra Life title, right? I'm actually showing it on stream now, nice and convenient. But the Extra Life title, you can actually have it blue, right? If you want, you can actually have it colored, right? In, you know, above your character, you can have it as a different color. And I think ArenaNet could maybe do that for other titles as well. So in other words, you could have different levels of the same title. And kind of provide that prestige to kind of not necessarily winning, because, well, I mean, I think this is a bit of a joke on NA even, right? That, you know, sometimes, you know, the monthly AT gets gate capped by the very, very top players on that server, right? They just come back and, you know, keep farming the monthly every single month, and the same players keep winning it, right? And, you know, I think, you know, having something like, oh, you know, we can go for the 2nd place title, right? Like, I know that, you know, that might work. That might be good enough to incentivize people a little bit.
I think that's a really good point, actually. Because if, like, my reason for playing PvP in the game still, as a dedicated PvP player, is not any game gold, any game title, anything in-game that I could get. It's just the good game. And I think the only really true good game you can have in Guild Wars 2 Conquest, anyway, is 5v5 team play, right? Really close games. So I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I think it's for sure game rewards are really positive for the game, but I think more teams is what we should really try to go for in PvP. Create more incentive for teams to form and play against one another, because that would create a healthy incentive for people to actually play.
100%. Like we've talked about this quite a few times, Growler, there's not enough emphasis on the team play. I feel like even ranked or even hugging ATs to an extent is 1v9, where I'm going to do my thing and fuck what everybody else does. Everybody else is trash. And if I personally like 5v5 ranked if you entered as a team and the leaderboards had a team attached to it, because then it's sort of, we need to promote the team play. That I feel like that is probably the best route to go down, because if you're going expecting people to do a certain role and fulfill things, then everybody understands it. Because although Guild Wars 2 has the emphasis of play how you want, I feel like PvP does need that sort of structure and emphasis on the team play.
Sure. I'm not sure if ranked is the way to go about that. I think we could do it through the automated tournament system. We have a really good system for this. Like, for example, I mean, the trouble is it's very easy to make a system that would be abusable, right? Like, you obviously want to promote people playing in the same team, right? In the same guild. So you can have some kind of system that will reward playing with players who are in the same guild as you, for example, right? You know, you get some more rewards for playing, you know, with a guild team, for example, right? To kind of have that social aspect. I think in general, the automated tournament rewards could actually be buffed a little bit, particularly with the advent of Swiss. They typically run now for an extra game, right? Like, you typically get one extra game out of it, like in terms of the overall length of the tournament. At the least. So I think we could see increased rewards to ATs. And actually, you know what? I'd like to see increased, like, daily incentive to play an AT every day. Like, we have a lot of these dailies in game, right? You know, daily tournament participator, daily player killer, daily rank point gain, all that kind of stuff. I'd like to see the daily automated tournament, like, be a really special thing. Right now, it'll give you 2 PvP potions. Maybe even crank that up. Make it 3. Make it 4. You know, I think, you know, what you do is, like, with all these game modes, is you want to bait people in with the carrot, right? You want to have this really nice incentive to play, you know, these team modes, play as a team, play more socially, and then once you have them hooked in with the reward, then they go, oh wow, this is actually kind of fun, right? And then they start playing it, and they keep playing like that.
Yeah, Shout out to the chat where PvP players have transcended beyond material needs. I quite like that comment.
It's a fun one.
It is. But yeah, I'm going to swing it back on because before the podcast was starting, there was some people who don't like in-houses. What are your view on an in-house? Can't even talk. It's been a long day at work. What are your view on in-houses, Teapot?
I think in-houses are actually really good, particularly for the entry-level community, because there are no stakes, right? You know, it's a friendly, right? Like, you know, I won't say no stakes. That's a bad way of putting it. It's a friendly thing, right? In ranked, it's like, oh, you know, that guy might start flaming me. Oh no, right? Oh no, I'm gonna lose on my rating. And in daily AT, it's like, oh, I'm gonna lose my gold. I'm gonna lose, right? But in an in-house, it's like a friendly, you know, like, oh, if you lose, whatever, right? Like, it doesn't really, no one's really gonna get mad if you lose the game. For whatever reason. I think that can be a much more relaxed, much more inviting atmosphere for a newer player into PvP. And it can be a really great environment to get solid practice as well. Like, if you're in an in-house, you can practice one specific thing very, very easily, right? You know, if you know, you could say, hey, you know, can you help me with this duel matchup that I'm trying to learn, all right? You know, or you can just ask, you know, what went wrong in that team fight? Like, how can we fix that? And it also enables you to be a little bit more coordinated as well. Like, for example, as you guys do, which I actually really like. And some of the in-houses don't do this, but I actually really like this is what you guys do. Well, you have everyone in Discord, because I think that kind of promotes the communication and gives you an idea of what real Guild Wars 2 is like, with that rotational aspect very, very heavily emphasized, and controlling the map by communicating with your team. And I think that's a very, very different experience to just playing something like ranked or even a daily AT. Like, most daily ATs, people aren't in voice, right? Like, even the relatively try-hard teams will quite a lot of the time just kind of chill out and just say, yeah, we're just going to play. Not going to hop on voice, we're just going to play and see if we can win. But when you have these in-houses, it gives you that really competitive feeling, because you have everyone talking, both teams communicating with each other to try and get the better of the other. And it's just, I think it's just a better environment for learning in general, and also a more comfortable environment, particularly for new players. So I think that kind of publicizing this stuff, publicizing in-houses, really getting the word out there with this stuff is absolutely the correct procedure for getting new players into the game.
Yeah, just looking at the chat there with Lord Hyzard, PvP and relax, is that even a thing? I'm going to say that is a thing, believe it or not. Maybe not in unranked, or maybe not in ranked, maybe. We could definitely say our in-houses, Creole is sort of the controlling aspect of that. Do you want to talk a bit more about our in-houses, Creole?
Sure. I mean, I thought we were having Teapot on the pod.
Yeah, bit of...
ask Teapot actually something, and I wanted to start with this in the beginning, but I didn't get a chance to. Teapot, how did you start with all of this, actually? Because I've been watching you for a long time, actually. Like, even when you had wood behind you, you know?
Ha! That's a very long time ago, goodness me.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I've been a part of the community for years, as has many, and, like, you've just been growing better and larger, and it's wonderful to see it. So I just want to know, like, how did you get into this?
What do you mean? Do you mean Twitch, or do you mean like trying to do tournaments, all that sort of thing?
Content tournaments a bit later, right? Content first. Twitch kind of came. You did a lot of podcasts with a lot of people about PvE at start. Then you switched to PvP, right?
Yeah, so the Tea Time podcast, that started quite a long time ago. And yeah, the first ever Tea Time was actually about game mechanics. It was about the specialization update, when we were changing over to specializations from traits. And yeah, everything kind of ran from there. Like, I used to do some YouTube videos, like some kind of like weird like meme videos. I still love those as well. Like, you can go, they still have on my channel, like some crazy videos about like measuring the size of Tyria, all that kind of stuff. And it was just like a hobby I would do. I just make some YouTube videos. And then I encountered this thing called Twitch. I was like, wow, this is pretty good, right? You know, streaming, like live streaming, like, wow, that's pretty good. I can do a video live. I can just start talking to people right now, right? And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty fun. And well, this is a long story, because I've been around for a while, as some people will certainly know. Then I actually came up with, I was trying to think of content, right? Because I didn't want to do just gameplay streams at the start. Like, I kind of move over to that, you know, when I kind of like established myself a little bit more. But I was like, okay, I want to do content. I want to have like exciting things. And one of the first things I ever did on Twitch, and you know, spilled over to YouTube, was actually something called Mystic Builds, actually, and that was a PvP tournament. And a lot of people in the chat will remember what that is. It hasn't been run for a while. It used to be regular. It even happened 2 times a week. a very long time ago. That was exhausting. But it was actually a 1v1 tournament, but the players would play with randomized builds, right? So you would have like random traits, random skills, and random weapons and that sort of thing. And that was kind of the start of the Twitch. And then raids came out in Heart of Thorns, and I started streaming a lot of raids, playing a lot of raids, and it just kind of went from there, right? Then I was like, oh, I'll play some World vs. World. I played World vs. World for basically like a year at that time as well, with Guild. We played GW2, right? All that kind of stuff, like all the good stuff in Heart of Thorns. Then Path of Fire came out, and that was like, ooh, okay, this is, okay, maybe not World vs. World anymore. And that was, yeah. That's basically the story, really. You know, then I did tournaments as well in between all of that. The tournament thing was just like, I've always liked tournaments. I've liked events. I've liked esports. You know, I'm really into StarCraft 2 in particular. It's my esport of choice. Always watch a lot of that, and I love the way those events get produced. I love the commentary, right? I love the overall event production that companies like Blizzard, ESL are able to pull off. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do that because I'm way better than all of them. Like, I'm far more talented than this Blizzard company. Oh, I'm way better. And yeah, I just started the conversation, right? And said, you know, let's do a raid tournament. Like, I was talking to Brazil just one evening, just having a chat with Brazil. I said, you know what? Let's do a raid tournament. And his exact reply was, he was like, okay, let's do it. And then we did the raid tournament. You know, my internet barely survived, but we got there in the end. And that was the dawn, the first elitist raiding party. That was the dawn of my tournament career, I suppose, as it were.
Where's the motivation come for you? Because you're nonstop for such a long time.
Well, when it comes to motivation, I'm not sure if I can really give a good answer to that. Like, I am just a driven person, I suppose, to an extent, right? You know, I'd really like to do something, you know, and entertain people and make people laugh, and I just want to do the best I can, right? You know, like my mission right now is to try and do my best for the Guild Wars 2 community. You know, I love the game, and, you know, I really want it to do well and flourish and thrive, and I want everyone to have fun while playing it and kind of share my enjoyment of the game and draw attention to these game modes, which I'd like to think I've succeeded with that. So, but yeah, the motivation is just, I like winning, I like succeeding, and I just do my best.
Oh, for sure, you succeeded for sure, and I think the future tournaments are going to be even bigger than Moda. Like, Moda 2 is going to be bigger than Moda 1.
Oh, they don't know. Seriously, like all the listeners right now, they've got no idea. Like, they can't see me, and they can't hear me, right? Because, you know, I'm muting the mic when I'm laughing. I'm absolutely, my sides are splitting because they don't have the critical information.
Ooh.
Sounds pungent.
I can't wait, man. I'm excited. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed watching Mota, just as a spectator, because it's nice just to get the PvP scene sort of, that hype behind it was just incredible. I think everybody got behind it, from even just the casual sort of PvE community. They like seeing that action, and every time you look on Twitch on sort of the viewers, quite often it is the PvP scene which is being mostly watched. So it proves that people want it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do want this kind of stuff. Like, I think competition in any game, in any activity, really, is always going to be of interest to people, right? Because you're seeing, it's fun to watch people be good at stuff, right? You know, it's fun to watch people be good at sports, right? It's fun to watch people be good at, you know, racing around, you know, in a really fast car, right? That's entertaining to watch people be competent, and it's the same in Guild Wars 2.
Yeah, could not agree more. But speaking of tournaments, I'm really bad at sort of multitasking. If you can't tell, not great for a podcast host. But I saw like a couple of guys from your guild were trying to sort of organize a entry level tournament. It was, oh man, I've been away from the game for that long. They were trying to deal with entry level tournaments. Do you think more things should be like that for players instead of just the top end?
Yes, in fact, I would go as far to say that sort of thing is more important. I think maybe stuff like the entry-level tournament, because the entry-level tournament isn't running anymore. There were a few reasons for that. We don't need to get into that, really. Need a bit more elbow grease is the bottom line, really. But I think you do need a lot of stuff. But I think that right now there might not actually be room for the really entry-level stuff, kind of because of the reasons we talked about before, right? About like the kind of lack of middle ground. I think what we need to see is actually the really, really like beginning, right? Like getting people playing ranked, getting people playing ATs on the right build, actively improving with the right mentality. Like I think that's the key right now, actually, not necessarily even entry-level tournaments. Like I think it is a bit of the entry-level tournament was more of a running before we could walk, if that makes any sense, right? I don't think the community was totally ready for it. But it is very important. Like, and it's something I do want to do in the future. To be clear, it's just that I think stuff like the in-houses and just streaming the daily ATs to kind of get people engaged, maybe placing a bounty to increase the rewards of the daily AT, like from our community, right, would also be good. Like just getting people playing is important. And then after that, that's when I think you can ramp up the events a little bit there, like outside the game. Like I think a really big problem with a lot of this stuff is that when you run a tournament, right, you have to use Battlefire, you have to use an external thing. And Guild Wars 2 always does a really good job of keeping everything internal to the game, right? If I want to play a tournament, I don't have to leave. I can simply join an LFG and boom, I queue up, right? And it is, I know it sounds not like a big deal to us, but it is actually a big deal to go to an external website, make an account, sign up, and do that there, and then get all your teammates to sign up there as well, right? That is actually a bit of a big step. And well, it was actually a hurdle with our recent tournament, the Conquest Open that we ran, is that a lot of players were like, oh, I can't be bothered. Especially those NA people. What the hell were they doing? They all signed up like 3 days before the bloody event. Unbelievable. Bunch of slackers. We got there in the end. And got everyone signed up. But yeah, it is that externality that can be a big hurdle, particularly for newer players on the scene.
Like especially if you're doing it as a creator, not somebody that's like on the inside, right? But gonna have to create it from the outside, get everybody to join up at the same time for one thing, one date, even though it's just a game, basically. Yep, I can imagine it being a gigantic like thing to pull off, almost impossible. But it's amazing. Like, still, people in PvP want these events to be pulled off. Like you said, it was easy with PvP players, right, to get them involved.
Oh yeah. And of course, it's 5 people, so it's not too bad, and the team's kind of already established, I suppose. But no, it was a lot of the high end teams were very easy to work with on the organizational admin front.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw some shade to the community now because right, exactly what you said at the start before the podcast, where it's like everybody wants all this good stuff. Right? Everybody wants the content. Everybody wants new things. But as soon as it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this tournament. Let's get involved. Can you sign up? That's just asking too much.
Oh,
come
dear.
on, guys. Come on.
He said it, dude. Oh my, you're in trouble now. You're in trouble now, my son. Goodness me. Yeah, I mean, this is one of my biggest frustrations with the community, actually, and to be clear, right? Like, because the chat might activate now, and I want to kind of forestall that here a little bit. But yeah, I understand there are a lot of problems about the game, and trust me, I love a good. Look, I'm British, guys. I love complaining. We love it here, right? It's amazing, but I think sometimes, and this is my approach now, because for those who know me, they will definitely know that I've complained about this game a lot, right? Okay, the devs know how much I complain about this game. Everyone knows how much I complain about this game. I like the game a lot, but I think it's got to the point where I just want to enjoy the game. I just want to have fun. And let me tell you this, and this is a really important message, right? A very, very important message that I really hope that all of our viewers and listeners here take to heart. It eventually drains you and you do not enjoy it, right? When I eventually took a break from the game, I quit the game around the time of the Icebrood Saga announcement temporarily. I went to go and play Classic WoW. Seriously, look, that's how sad I was, guys, right? That is how sad I was. I went to play Classic WoW, right? I was miserable. I could derive no enjoyment from playing Guild Wars 2 again, at all, right? PvP, World of Sword raids, I could not enjoy any of it, right? I was borderline like dreading loading up the game, right? And all I would do on stream was basically like run around on my roller beetle and just like do like weird meme debates and like call Biggs a snake and get him in here, right? Like, you know, that was entertaining, right? Like, that's not horrible. Like, believe me, like, that was some good content. But just complaining and nothing else when you don't see any response to that for years, right? And, you know, I don't want to throw shade at ANET too much here. That's not the point of this podcast, as we discussed previously. But it is a very draining thing, and it will kill your enjoyment of the game. And that was, you know, that was what I was, you know, that's what I was alluding to earlier with some of these discussions that we've been having. You want to try and make the best of your situation to an extent. Yes, there are problems. Yes, ArenaNet should and could do more. Absolutely. Those statements are true. But those statements don't really help me have more fun in the moment, right? Okay, like, they don't help me enjoy the game more. And, you know, you could argue that's, I guess, a very pessimistic way to look at it. Like, I just view it as a very practical way to look at it. I'm playing a video game. I want to have fun, and I want to make sure that all the people I'm playing with enjoy the game so I can keep playing with them. And that's why these community events are so important. Because ultimately, can we force ArenaNet to focus on PvP? No. And look, and I know this is a PvP podcast, I don't want to rain on the mood too much. It is very unlikely ArenaNet will ever focus on PvP. Like, it's incredibly unlikely that it happens. I think that ship has sailed, sadly, quite a long time ago. However, can we still make the game so that it has a great PvP scene, right? And everyone has a lot of fun, right? And we have a great community in the game. Yes, we can do that. We absolutely can do that. And this is what I was taught, you know, this is about like making your protest viable, right? In a way, like, you know, right now it's a very small amount of players complaining about a game mode that not many people care about. And that's not just PvP, that's world versus world, PvP and raids, okay? However, if we could actually get a large portion or a good amount of players engaged with these modes and say, wow, this is really, really good, could we then maybe actually start the road to recovery and get ArenaNet to do a little bit more? Yeah, I think we could. So in a way, like, I'm just taking the long way around, or not even the long way around. Like, you know, it's again, you know, you need to be able to walk before you can run, right? You can definitely, you know, get some complaining going, get some Reddit posts, and get some discussion going about the game, and petition ArenaNet to fix this stuff. But the thing is, right, they aren't really going to listen to the petition unless you have like you know, a good chunk of players engage in this stuff. They aren't going to do it out of the goodness of their hearts just because, you know, like, we on the ArenaLabs podcast say, hey, ArenaNet, fix PvP, would you? No, that's not how it works. You know, they need to have a financial motive. Like, ultimately, they are a business. They need to make money. They've got mouths to feed, right? And at the end of the day, what pays the bills right now at ArenaNet is the story content, like the story content, the gem store content. And that is the reality of the situation, right? Like, I don't like that either. Like, I wish that they had infinite money and infinite developers and they could develop everything. That would be awesome, but they don't. They have finite resources, finite time, and a player base that is not particularly interested in those game modes. So what we need to do as the community is we need to voice our complaints, our critiques with reason and rationale, and keep enjoying the game as best as we can and building the community and making our case to ArenaNet. Like, if we're just like screeching all day, all night on the subreddit, on the forums, like, oh, ArenaNet, yeah, oh, it's so trash, the Ice Brood saga, oh my god, it's the worst thing ever, then that's not really going to get anything done. You're not going to get the job done like that. What you need to do is to slowly build up there. And yes, this should have been done a very long time ago. And yes, this is a little late, but in my opinion, it's never too late as long as there's an expansion. With an MMO, as long as you've got an expansion, you've got hope, right? And maybe it's not hope. And you know what? Maybe it doesn't work out. And maybe, like, we, you know, all of our titanic efforts isn't good enough. But at least we can say that we tried.
Yeah,
exactly. Everything's possible to someone that tries, right?
Something I want to kind of praise Crayola for, because as you were going on about people affecting the game, negativity is very contagious. Where it will, obviously, if one person's moaning who he's talking to every day, that's going to affect your life. But something Crayola said to me when we started playing together was, Ranks is shit show. I don't enjoy it. I'm just gonna do it myself. I'm gonna get my own hands, and that's how like our in-house leagues have kind of started. And obviously, the moaning and the negativity isn't working with the content thing, getting new content for PvP. So as a community, we kind of need a change of tactic. If we sort of do our own thing and promote PvP ourselves, that will bring more players to us, which will obviously bring a financial incentive to ArenaNet, and eventually we might get some content.
Yes.
No,
completely. Like, we have tried the complain strategy for the last 8 years, right? And that's not a hyperbole, that is accurate. Since pretty much day one of Guild Wars 2, the complaining was there, right? And look, I'm not against complaining. Like I said, I love complaining. I'm about it, right? But the thing is, if you want to actually elicit change, I just don't think complaining is the way to go about it, because it doesn't work, right? It just doesn't, like with ArenaNet, for whatever reason. And if you think that's right or wrong, I mean, well, I guess you can complain about that as well, but, that's not going to work either. So good luck. It really comes down to, like, do you actually want to get change? And you were talking about this earlier, Sneakers, and you're completely right? The second you say, okay, so, you want the game to get better, right? You want the PvP community to grow. So why don't you do something about it? Why don't you organize a tournament? Why don't you come and play in this tournament or play in these in-houses, right? Like, the second you say that, that's when the excuses start coming out. That is when the, like, no, ANET should do it, not me, right? And and that is when I start to kind of just, smirking a little bit, feeling a little bit smug about myself, like that's, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and then we'll throw more shade, like you said earlier. If you're not happy, uninstall.
Get it out of here. Get out. Whenever you or I would say something like that, we're obviously being hyperbolic, right? Like, we're not saying, like, literally do that. Like, I don't want anyone to uninstall this game. I think the game is great, and if you're unhappy with it, then that is fair enough. You can definitely critique this game in a fair way. There are a lot of things wrong with this game. No one's going to dispute that. But I really think that, it is a case of practicality, right? That we want the game to look good, and we want people to be excited about the game. And, you said this earlier, and, I couldn't put it better myself, so I won't even try. Negativity is contagious, and it can make things appear worse than they actually are if everyone is constantly miserable and just constantly not having fun in the game because they're always miserable about the game. I just don't think that's where you want to go. You just don't want to play a game like that. And, if you really can't get past that, if you can't transcend to the Zen stance, right, in Guild Wars 2, then but ultimately it probably is a good idea to quit.
For sure, it is a good idea to quit. I mean, it is just a game. It's a part of life. There is real life. We talk about it, right? Like, as much as some people may have these two merged together to an extent, it's still just a thing that you're doing. And if it's kind of harming you in any kind of way, and if you're being negative to yourself, basically, just typing that kind of shit, what are you doing? You shouldn't. Uninstalling the game is actually work. Just don't play it. Don't turn it on. Have it there, because it's a fantastic game. Come back when you have shit figured out and you want to take free time to play the game. I think it's healthy to actually go.
I think we got derailed there. We try to. It's inevitable. We always end up in this conversation of, like, the state, almost the state of the game every time.
Yeah,
I know it's kind of inevitable.
It is inevitable, right? And well, I mean, not to discourage you all, but this is one of the reasons why I actually stopped doing my podcast, right? Stopped doing Tea Time. Was because the conversation, to an extent, repeats itself. The situation with ArenaNet is that there is only so much you can say, right, about the game. Like, the conversations do tend to have similar themes when you get right down to it.
Yeah. I'm going to shift the
a good plan
subject, yes, right now, if we could, before we go down the rabbit hole of that. With PvP, obviously, the meta is obviously a huge discussion with that. In-houses and tournaments, have you considered, I know in the last one, did you ban Decap Scrapper, correct?
Yeah, Decap Scrapper was banned for one of the... It was banned in the open, the free, It was banned in, like, the entry-level tournament. but there was nothing banned, I believe, in the open.
So what is your kind of opinion with community? So we're going to talk mainly with the community PvP side of things rather than the actual game stuff that's there. Do you think banning builds is good or bad, or do you think people should just embrace what is actually in the game for like the community challenges and stuff?
It's a really, really hard issue, because sometimes there are builds that are legitimately broken and shouldn't exist, and sometimes there are builds that might not even necessarily be optimal, but people just complain about them anyway. Like a really big example actually was this actually in Motor. People will be like, oh, ban Condi Thief, ban Condi Thief, ban Condi Thief. Power Thief won, not Condi Thief, right? Master of the Arena, right? And I think that's a really interesting observation to have there, right? And you know, like a lot of people wanted me to ban Calarev for the Conquest Open recently, and I ended up not doing that. I was very torn. I was like, oh, this build is kind of obnoxious. And I think Calarev is actually close to a build you would kind of want banned, because it just breaks the design of the game. But it's not like Calarev like necessarily made the game like unbelievably horrible. Actually, in the Delusionist Conquest Open, I was actually really worried about the games being bad, but the games were actually really good. In that, like they were fluid. There were a lot of kills about the place, and I know it was. You know, everyone was talking to me like, oh, seriously, every game's gonna go to timer. Oh, it's gonna be like 100-point games. Oh, it's bunker meta, bunker meta. It wasn't a bunker meta at all, especially with the innovation of Tyrone, and everyone's starting to play Burn Dragon Hunter.
The pleb farmer.
And just farming everyone.
That build is so, like, for such a long time, DH was kind of left to the side, but I love it when, like, builds pop out of nowhere, or ones that are specifically, like, DH Trapper, it's been now renowned for, like, a bit of a low-ranked farmer, and then, like, in the top end of the plays, it's just, like, popped up, and everyone's like, this is broken, like, why is this allowed?
Yeah.
I love stuff like that.
It's a really interesting one. And I think this is something about games that are less active that can be problematic and really hard for a developer to actually compute as well. This is really hard for CMC, who's kind of in charge of the balance of PvP, is that if the game is, how can we say this, like less active, it can be really hard to see what the actual metagame is, right? And what actually is good. Again, Master of the Arena is a really good example of this. Like, everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, Tempest bad, Firebrand good, Firebrand, like, imagine playing Tempest. Imagine not playing Firebrand. You're like, oh yeah, you guys just don't know how to play it right. Turns out, Firebrand kind of got trampled over in Master of the Arena, right? Like, and turns out that actually, yeah, Tempest was, yeah, very, very strong and arguably overpowered. In the PvP context. And you have a lot of these things where is something overpowered, or have people not adapted to it yet, right? Have people not come up with the counter yet to this stuff? And that's not to say that there aren't balance issues. There absolutely are. Like, you know, stuff like, you know, nades are still way too strong. Burn DH is incredibly Bepega. Like Kala Renegade, yeah, yeah. And Spellbreaker, obviously, support warrior, very, very disgusting, right? In all these things, but you know, in a way, like I always still think, is there something out there that people just haven't tried yet that kind of blows people up? Because like, take a look at grenades. It's not like grenades were like, you know, they didn't get buffed. Right, nades just kind of fell into the metagame because someone was like, wait, hang on a minute, this is actually insane, right? And nades was another really big part of why rank 55 dragons were so successful in Master of the Arena, was because they kind of had that nade advantage, right? No one else was playing grenades at that time, and it was a build come up with, you know, Zan and Sage Splitter on EU, as I understand it, like kind of came up with this, like cooked up this brand new Hollowsmith build that, well, I mean, it was effective, shall we say, right? Like quite powerful, quite a good build actually, and you know, that's kind of that kind of innovation, like changing the metagame like that, it allows the game to self-correct to an extent, right? You know, that even though there are balance issues, it can almost be the case that is it overpowered, or have people just not counted it yet? And that's really hard from a developer perspective to have a look at, like, because some of the interactions can just come out of nowhere, right? Like, oh wow, you know, now this is really good, right? Because someone tried it and someone came up with that. This build got countered by that build that wasn't good, but now it is good because that build counters this build that's now in the metagame, right? And then, you know, the cycle continues. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about games like this, competitive games, is that there is this constantly evolving element to it of players trying to counter each other, trying to say, oh yeah, that beats this, that beats that, right? You know, and you know, who knows what people are going to come up with, right? Like one thing I definitely actually keep an eye on is actually Scourge right now. Like not a lot of people play Scourge right now in PvP, but then there's Prototype. These French players, they're really, the French players, guys, have got giant brains in Guild Wars 2. That's true, by the way. Okay, that's actually,
For sure.
that's accurate. And Prototype, I see him playing this build, I'm like, wow, how is this so good? It's just like, how is that build so strong? You know, and of course it's in daily AT, so it's not like, it's not winning monthlies or anything like that. But you know, I just watch it, I watch him play and I go like, damn, that looks pretty good, you know?
Yeah.
I'm gonna once again, back in my day in Guild Wars 1, how often did you see the meta change because of the amount of number of skills on like a monthly basis, like no balance patch, like someone just find some skill, throw it in a skill bar, and then it'll be like, oh, new meta, done. It's crazy. And hitting the nail on the head, what you said was people sometimes do not try and counter these toxic builds, as we can call them. They kind of go on meta battle or gods of PvP and be like, oh, that's it. And they don't really do any theory crafting on how to beat it. Like if you're first in projectiles or as a necro, maybe throw on what the gas, what's it called, poison cloud. Just little things like that can change a game.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun when team versus team theory crafting comes into play.
Yeah, I'd like to see more emphasis on sort of a team build, because at the moment it's sort of you just pick the roles and the best things in those roles. I like it. I like synergy. That's the nice thing to see. So like when you CC locking and then throwing the nades on, as much as we hate nades, but that's more coordinating play. I'd like to see synergy between sort of two different trait lines of and coordinating things like that. That might be an interesting route for PvP to go down. Add it to the wish list of content.
Yeah, of course. And okay, so on the topic of balance, like I feel like we're kind of skirting around this. I think this is definitely worth addressing on this podcast, right? We were kind of promised more balance, and that didn't really happen, right? Even with Miss CMC, the snapper, the Thanos of Guild Wars 2 meta, even with him on the case, it's not there. And I think this really does tie into the expansion, right? Like, you know, you can't really talk about Guild Wars 2 these days without bringing up the expansion. And the reason, and this actually got let slip on not a podcast, sorry, but on a extra live stream, like a bit of a leak here from ANET, in fact, revealed that CMC is actually helping the skills team design the new elite specializations, right? And I suspect this is why we aren't getting much balance, because I would say that CMC's day job now is mostly working on design, right? He's making sure that the design is good. So I know this is going to sound such a meme, you know, considering like the context of this past conversation and some of the talks that happen around the game right now. I really wouldn't ask people just hold tight, right? Or just take a break if you really don't like the metagame right now, because I think very little is going to change until the expansion, or maybe one patch before that, like they did with, you know, HOT and Path of Fire. They kind of like nerfed everything into the ground right before Path of Fire came out, because I would imagine that they are almost exclusively working on making sure that when that expansion comes out, the classes are designed well and they aren't going to break the game. They don't want to have a repeat of Mirage, which class mechanic just breaks Guild Wars 2, right? Like being able to, you know, do anything while dodging is a mechanic that just probably shouldn't exist in Guild Wars 2, right? And again, Scourge, like when Scourge came out, it just kind of broke the game, right? Like you could cover the entire node and just spam and just kind of just delete people, right? Like, you know, with just like going crazy, right?
Yeah, especially with Firebrand.
And I think that is what we're going to see addressed in the expansion, right? Like, they're going to try to make sure that these specializations don't ruin the game. Like, for me, Path of Fire killed World versus World. Like, even now it's been nerfed a lot, I struggle to enjoy World versus World gameplay simply because Firebrand, Scourge, and Scrapper exist. Like, they're just so obnoxious, and Power Ev, and literally every other class in the meta, actually. But never mind that, because the point still stands. Like, you know, it's just not fun. Right? There's just so much damage and so much sustain that, you know, you get like one shot, or, you know, everyone like never really dies, right? Because, you know, you just like really bunker down. It's just not enjoyable. Like Path of Fire was a disaster in terms of elite specialization design, right? Like, and this is the key element here, and this is what CMC is hopefully looking at. It's the class mechanics that were the problem in Path of Fire. You can change numbers, right? But you can't say, oh yeah, Scourge doesn't have shades anymore, right? You can't remove the shade. You can't remove Mirage Cloak, right? Like, those things will exist forever, right? And that's what they need to avoid.
That's a good point. Like, doing something while you're dodging, like, what's that about? Like, it's nothing counterplaying that, or like a condi spam, something like that. Constant bunker. It's of course it's not engaging. Definitely not engaging. What we can do, right, to kind of maybe more positive mental attitude, like, we can maybe make games that would make more sense, right, with certain types of builds. Mystic builds, it is one aspect of it where we have random traits, but maybe builds that aren't broken but interesting enough, you know, or like, as you maybe ban certain builds and make the game competitive, at least amongst ourselves, those who want to play, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, speaking of sort of banning certain things, or going along that aspect, I'm looking at, we've talked about a little bit of this before on sort of other games like League of Legends, for example. I'm not fluent in that, so I'm sorry in advance. They've banned certain hero or champions in sort of the high ranking things. There was one infamous hero, which was, it had a really low win percentage because the majority of players could not play it, but the high ranking players, it was broken because they had the mechanical skill. I would quite like to see more emphasis on that, where if it's a hard build to play, it should be broken, rather than the other way around, it seems, in Guild Wars 2, where the builds which aren't very hard to play just completely dominate.
Well, that is kind of like a nice thought, but that's just not how balance works, right? Just because something is harder doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be better. I don't think that's necessarily how it goes. If you want to be balanced, you want to have everything sort of around the same level, depending on depending on the current balance of the game, right? You want to make sure that everything is vaguely on par with each other. That's what balance is, right? Regardless of the skill level.
Well, I'm no developer, so I don't know. I just have a wish list. It's super long wish list. Like, we had CMC on the podcast. He gave us a really, really nice insight to sort of the behind the scenes of what happens and how he goes about the balance changes. As we all know, he can only change numbers currently, but I like what we were talking about before. It's going to be good when he can sort of have a hand in the mechanics. So, because I wasn't around when Path of Fire launched, but I heard even full counter was like one-shotting people.
Oh yeah, like that. That's good, dude.
That brilliant design for that one. Whoever made that, kind of, it's just questionable. I can't really put it any other way.
Oh no, it definitely is questionable, and it is very frustrating, right? Like, when you're playing against a build that is a pretty face rolly build, right? I think the biggest culprit of this, I think, would be the Core Guardian build, like the Symbol Monkey Guard that was around, has been now been nerfed significantly. It's nowhere near as strong as it used to be, but like, when you're playing against a build like that, it's very frustrating. Right? It's just like, oh man, like, I'm playing so well, but this guy is just like mashing all his buttons and I'm losing. This sucks, right? And that is a case of like, where something like is just broken. But the thing is, right, like, what was the actual problem with that build? Was that build bad? Was that build stupid because it was too easy to play? No, that wasn't the problem with the build. The problem with the build is that it was very badly designed, right? Like, this rid of persistence trait where you can cover the entire point with symbols is bad design, right? And now people aren't going to like mega complain about Core Guard anymore so much, right? Because they nerfed the symbol trait. So, and now the build is not so much of a problem, right, anymore. Like, it's still playable. It's still, it's not amazing anymore, but you can absolutely play it, and it feels way less frustrating to play against now. And that can be the approach you have with balance. You can you can just remove these problematic design elements, make sure everything's roughly at the same level, and is perfectly effective if you choose to play it, and then away you go.
Yeah, I think mechanics is bad mechanics is a really interesting sort of way to put it. We've talked, I've seen you talk about it on your stream quite a few times and you're going to be talking to sort of two thief players here. Like bad mechanics, and you say like stealth, for example, is in a whole a bad mechanic. That is the thing it's not the problem with sort of the idea of it, or this it is the mechanic itself, and negating that will have a positive effect on balance patches. Like if it's not completely something that cannot be counted, that's sort of the problem with it. Obviously we have reveal and things like that, but when there is literally no counter other than run away, I feel like that's a bad mechanic.
It is, yeah. It's funny. I think Thief has kind of I don't know how Thief has got away with it such a long time, but like Thief is probably the most dominant class in the metagame right now for PvP, and a lot of that is because it has mechanics that are extremely difficult to play against, right? Like, stealth is definitely one of them. It's very hard to effectively play against stealth. It's very hard to effectively play against steal, right? And of course, just like Thief's ability to move around the map as effectively as it can just makes it really, really hard to actually counter Thief without like significantly screwing yourself over or getting an outplay there as well. It's very, very good. Like Thief is super strong.
It is, like, especially on Battle of Kyler or something like that, where advantage for Thief, you really need a rev, something to compete with it like that. Or like Bunker. If the meta is too bunkerish, Thief can't really outnumber, can't really get the kill.
Yeah, if the side noders are able to survive the Thief Plus, then yeah, Thief is not as good. And I think if you have another competitor for mobility as well, like so if like Power Rev is really, really good and can kind of match the Thief in terms of its mobility, or you have Mesmer about the place as well. Like, of course, Mesmer kind of does get countered a little bit by Thief, but if that got toned down a bit, and then maybe you started seeing Portal play as well for your map control, your map presence move there as well, like you used to, then that's also another potential option that you could go down with kind of balancing this out. Right now, Thief is essentially uncontested in the map control role, right? Like there is no other class that really does that in Guild Wars 2.
100% agree. Like having a trade-off, it should be a thing. Like maybe if it's Thief has the mobility while Mesmer has the superior burst, but that it needs a competitor in every role. So then you're like, oh, which one am I taking? Instead of just being like, oh, we're going to take Thief regardless. It's a must pick. I don't know, because I haven't been playing the game recently. I've been ridiculously busy. So, because there has been like a little stealth background nerf to Glob, as far as I'm aware. I don't know if that's changed the metagame or if there's been any sort of new pop-ups of Mesmers coming around. If anyone's noticed that.
Well, I mean, the Mesmers are still very demoralized for losing their dodge roll. But Helseth is around. He's still, and I believe he's live a lot of the time with titles such as like greatest of all time, #1 Mirage player, amazing gamer, right? That kind of thing. So like maybe we'll see some of that. And Mirage is not. If you play against Mirage in ranked, like it does damage, right? That at least it does that. Like it's not like completely horrible. But it is just when you take it to that competitive level and you encounter a really good Thief. I was doing some in-houses with Helseth actually, and Misha was playing his Chronomancer build, and he actually rage quit after just a few rounds playing against Pain on his Thief, because he was basically getting farmed by the Thief like the entire game, and he was like, no, I'm out, and then he left midway through the match. It was
Yeah, it's
good content.
I think the problem is with Thief. I like both Mesmer and Thief. Obviously, I play more Thief, but the problem is that it's not even a competition of which one it's taken. Thief literally counters its competitor, which I think is like from a game standpoint is a terrible design. Like they both you should not have one which counters the other like competitor in that role at all. Like obviously you got Chrono and things like that. Glob is, I agree. Glob is dumb. It needs probably a bit more of a tone down. One class should not just have a panic button, but that I'd like to see more variety, especially in the Roma department, because there's variety of different bunkers and like side nodes and things like that, and then you've got different types of support. But in the Roma department, the +1s, it is literally Thief.
And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. Like the trouble with Thief is that a lot of the other classes, as you say, that could potentially go into that role, kind of get shut down really hard, either by the current metagame or by Thief itself, which leads to this very self-fulfilling prophecy where you try and play something else, and then like the Thief farms you the entire game. It's like, oh well, okay, I guess I'll just re-roll Thief again then, right? I mean, that's how it goes.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong, I like Thief. Thief is fun to play. But I want some competition. I don't just want to be automatically winning at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure people who like playing PvP, they're all about the GG. No one likes a 500-0 stomp either way. It's really demoralizing because it's just like, oh, well, everybody's just going to AFK. We're already 300 points up. What's the point? I hate that. Something Crayola has always said is, I'm just in it for the GG. And most players who are strictly PvP will probably agree with that. They just want a good game. When it's intense, I like it when it goes the like 5 points in, and you may have been absolutely carrying the whole team, but you get that sense of sort of pride with it, and having just a direct counter to builds. But then it improves the meta game because you'll have to counter a counter. But all about that GG. That's what I want.
It's all about the gaming. The gaming.
Gaming. Hey, speaking of gaming, when do you want to start the in-houses?
I don't know.
Teapot. I'm asking you actually.
Well, oh wow. I mean, whenever. Like, how long are we going on the podcast? I can talk forever. You know, could go all night. I don't mind.
Oh jeez, I cannot do all night.
Yeah, dude.
I got assignments in it for 12 o'clock, and I have not started them yet. So. Oh, gonna be cutting it fine. But I think this is a good sort of segue to maybe move on to talk about a little bit about the in-house leagues and the Reims, and then we go on to doing them. I don't know. What do you think?
Perfect.
I like it. So, Crayola, this is your bread and butter, mate. This is what your brainchild. So, tell the world what the aim of our in-houses is and what it's all about.
Well, it's just getting good games, and you have to be in voice chat. You don't have to talk, you just have to be present. You have to be a part of it, right? Be a gamer, basically, is what we're going
gamer. Very nice.
Yeah. The main requirement is that you have an understanding of PvP. You don't have to be anywhere like top level, but if you have an understanding of your role and simple rotations, then we'll get you in. There are some really, really good players that do join us, and being in combos with them, you can learn a lot. So if you are kind of keen on trying to learn and trying to progress the ranks, it's a good sort of learning space. Obviously, there is a little bit of competitive banter which is thrown around. So if you maybe get called out for a bit, it's all in good fun though. There's no malice behind it. So if I sort of fall off the map, being a pleb or something like that, or die from fall damage, I expect to be called out. So that it's a bit of joking with it, like you'd expect in any sort of competitive aspect.
Okay, so going forward with the in-houses, what we're trying to do from the start, right, is basically get it going at least once a week. We're doing it, but maybe more times would be even better because there's nothing going on in PvP. Now, of course, regarding balance, we can make our own games to an extent. I'm prohibiting some stuff and different kind of requirements like that, but I mean, it depends on how many and who of the players that join. We should have tiers as well. Like, I know Helsith hosted his high-level in-houses, which is only for a certain tier of players, right? What we're doing is the mid-tier. What you, Teapot, were saying earlier, the big chunk of the mid that's missing, that's what we're trying to fill with this. That's basically it. So everybody's welcome to join. We're just looking for the good games. That's it. Really straightforward. And I think it's really healthy to keep it going weekly because that's how something happens. And I'm really looking forward to you doubling down, Teapot, on like prizes and stuff like this to incentivize more teams.
Yeah, I've got a lot of strategies. I've always got my schemes, right? About all this stuff. I have my schemes, my plans, my machinations. See what we can do for Guild Wars 2.
So just to kind of sorry to cut you off there, Crayola, because obviously incentives is one reason why we all play. We like shiny things, unless you're a dedicated PvP player who has a ton of Mystic coins. We occasionally drop the little prize. So if there's a ridiculously insane play, there was one a couple of weeks ago where a Condi Zerka like 1v2'd on like a side node against two people who they should not have like lost to, basically. So they got a prize for sort of play of the evening. So we do prizes like that. And just looking at chat, how do people sign up, Gorilla? Or how do people get involved?
Oh yeah, we have a server going, of course, where you should join. That's where the voice channels are as well. We go into separate teams once the teams are set up, and we start the game by casting and talking about them. Anybody that would like to join, conversation-wise, just commentating and like talking about what's actually going on in the games themselves, like the battles, 3v3s, 2v2s, 1v1s, rotations, anything is welcome to do so. I think conversation in that sense should be appropriate between us, like chat or whoever is listening. Everybody that cares is welcome to join.
Get in there. So you've got the Discord link getting spammed in the chat. So if you want to get involved, guys, be sure to join up there. Everyone's going to get in here. Everyone's going to be infesting the ArenaLabs Discord. Ready to go. Yeah,
so for those who are just wondering as well, it is only for EU at the moment. We will probably bridge the gap over the pond at some point. It's just a small kind of operation at the moment, but we do have intentions to kind of go get the NA involved. Obviously, if you have an EU account, by all means, get involved.
Get in. Transfer over. Just transfer to EU. Just do it. Get in.
Yeah, the superior server.
Ooh. Ooh, that's controversial right there. That's spicy.
Oh, well, as an EU player, I've got to be biased for one side.
That's true. And I guess we can just look at the last tournament, the last cross-region tournament results. I guess we can just take a look at that. I suppose we can. Exactly. Might be a good way to do it.
But for those who have kind of stuck around, I feel like people want to kind of play now, get the in-houses games going. For those who have stuck around for the podcast and listen to stuck around on the stream as well and are listening in the future, thank you very much for listening, and thank you Teapot for coming on and giving us this opportunity as well live.
Oh, no worries, anytime.
We're going to be calling you randomly at like 3 a.m.
Oh, now. Yeah? Oh, the thing is, you've got to be careful with that game because I might pick up. So you've got to watch out.
Oh, called out on the bluff.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yep, so thanks again for listening, and we will stay competitive, everyone, and we will see you all in the arena.